So I accidentally read 52 books in 2023. So my goal for 2023 was to read 26 books, because in 2022 I read 52 and it was a lot. And I struggled and I didn't enjoy it, so I thought I'd read half as many books. And then I just ended up reading 52 again. But this time it wasn't a goal, it was me actually wanting to read the books. So I read all these books and it was great. And I'm going to talk to you about all 52 books I read. There will not be links in the description because that's a lot of links. But, you know, I will talk about all the books very briefly, avoiding spoilers for fiction and giving my thoughts on the books in as brief a time as possible. So let's get into it. I will be reading off my Goodreads, which you can follow me on, link in the description down below. Number 1 is Sea Prayer by Khaled Hosseini. I think I mentioned I made a video on this book. I actually am not the biggest fan of Khaled Hosseini's books, but this was really good, and I highly recommend you buy it because I think some of the profits go towards helping refugees, so you should buy this book. Next is White Fragility, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism by Robin DiAngelo. I think this was a very interesting read, a very interesting dive into understanding what white fragility is and, you know, the discussions about racism we have at the moment. Number 3 is A Line in the Sand by James Barr. You know what? Surprisingly relevant right now because it talks a lot about how the British and the French carved up the Middle East and deliberately created all of these issues we're facing right now in the Middle East due to their greed post-World War I. Number 4, The Sympathizer by Viet Thanh Nguyen. I made a video on this. This book took me many attempts to read. I finally read it this year and I'm so glad I did. Such a great book, and I'm actually really looking forward to reading the second one sometime in 2024. Number 4. Number 5, The Discovery of India by Jawaharlal. Bloody fly. Number 5, The Discovery of India by Nehru Saab. This was actually a very interesting book. Obviously, I am of South Asian descent. I'm half South Indian, so I wanted to read the book by Nehru. It was pretty good, you know, a bit long, a bit self-indulgent, but, you know, it's Nehru, I suppose. Next is Inverting the Pyramid, The History of Football Tactics by Jonathan Wilson. You know, I'm not going to go over this very much. If you're into football tactics, if you're going to work in football, definitely read this book. Confessions of a Bookseller by Sean Bythell. I hope I said that right. You know what? I remember reading the first one many years ago. It's fine, you know, it's a biography type deal, a diary, if you will, so yeah, it's fine. You know, if you're interested in books and book selling, why not pick it up? Next is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I was surprised by this book. I wasn't expecting it to go the way it did go, and it did go that way, so read it, but also maybe do a little bit of research into the book itself, just in case there might be some trigger warnings surrounding this. Next is Capitalism and Slavery by Eric Williams. Very good book, very informative book, highly recommend it. The Cat Who Saved Books by Natsukawa. Love this book. So sweet, so wholesome, so funny, such an edgy cat as well. Again, good read. The Fight by Norman Mailer. Again, maybe more so if you're interested in boxing, if you're interested in politics of Africa as well. So, you know, it's a little bit more of a niche read. If you're into those kind of things, read them. If you're into Muhammad Ali, read it. The Dictatorship Syndrome by Allah Al-Aswani. I didn't really enjoy this book too much. Personal recommendation, probably don't pick it up. I didn't really like. This Oriental Isle by Jerry Broughton. Again, a book that is more so about history, about the relationship between Islam and Britain throughout history, especially I think from the Victorian era, Elizabethan era onwards. This book is set. So again, more of a history book. If you're kind of interested in that, maybe pick it up. I think you can pick up the paperback pretty cheap at this point. Five Little Pigs by Agatha Christie. I am a fiend for Poirot, so if you're also a fiend for Poirot, of course read. Typhoon by Shiraz. Yeah, an interesting read set, you know, in South Asia. Again, I think you kind of need to be sort of interested in books from there to more pick this one up, I think. Kachinko by Min Jin Lee. Loved it. Really great book. Really heartfelt. Really deep. Really just heart-wrenching. Again, one of my definitely pick up. The Children of Húrin by J.R.R. Tolkien. If you're into Tolkien, if you're into The Lord of the Rings, take the step into reading The Children of Húrin and all of the other unfinished tales. Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Angela Y. Davies, an extremely important book. I highly recommend you read this book. I highly recommend everyone reads this book, especially given the things that are going on in the world right now. Unfinished Tales of Middle-earth and Númenor by J.R.R. Tolkien, same as Children of Húrin. If you're into the Lord of the Rings, if you're into that kind of stuff, check it out. Apartheid is Not a Game by Jeff Brown. If you're interested in politics and sport and interested in the history of apartheid, highly recommend picking up this pamphlet. It's very interesting, especially to learn about the cricket boycotts and the effect of the apartheid tour in South Africa. The Motorcycle Diaries by Che Guevara. Very interesting read. Interesting to see Che Guevara's insight into Latin America at that point in his life. I think I read this for Che's birthday, so... Exit West by Mohsen Hamid. I have a love-hate relationship with Mohsen Hamid books. Some of them I really like, some of them I don't like at all. Exit West was more on the side that I quite liked. Again, considering its topic being around refugees and about humanizing them a lot in this book, pick it up. All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I thought this was a snore. I think I made a video on this and I was like, cut out all the stuff that makes you sympathize with the Nazi, and I'd prefer this book. Was not a fan of like half of this book, I'll be honest. This Is How You Lose a Time War by Amal Al-Muhtar and Max Gladstone. You know what? Amazing book. Just read this. I highly recommend this book. I loved the double perspectives. I loved the relationship in this. Honestly, like a top book I read this year. A top fiction book I read this year. The Barcelona Legacy by Jonathan Wilson. Again, another book. If you're interested in football, interested in working in football, interested about the history of football, pick it up. If not, don't. I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Baek Si-hee. My most popular video this year. Again, comes with caveats. I think you should read this, but if you are struggling with some of the things that the author was struggling with and it might be a trigger for you, please look into that. If not, pick it up. It's very popular for a very good reason. So yeah, I recommend it. How to Kidnap the Rich by Rahul Raina. Fun book. Decent caper, set in India. Kind of like White Tiger. I think I enjoyed it a little bit more than I enjoyed White Tiger, to be honest. Battle Royale by Takami. I think mine was the newer edition of the book, which some people don't like as much, some people do. I've not read both editions, so it's the only one I've read. I thought it was, you know, an interesting read. Very gruesome, very gory. You know, the basis of a lot of Battle Royale stuff. Capitalism vs. Freedom by Rob Larson. Very interesting book. Pick it up if you're interested in the effects of capitalism. Palestine, A 4,000-Year History by Nur Masalha. Very, very interesting book. It does go a lot into ancient history and stuff, so you're interested in that as well. I would recommend this book. Maybe not as an intro point for Palestine, but a good overview of history, I think. Azadi by Arundhati Roy. I've gushed about Roy before. Very great author. If you want to learn about lots of stuff about freedom, get a perspective about the effects of capitalism and imperialism, pick up all of Roy's books, to be honest. Orientalism by Edward Said. Just buy this book. Just buy it and read it. Everyone needs it on their bookshelves. The Dance of the Deep Blue Scorpion by Akram Musallam. Very experimental book. I think I've spoken about this quite a lot this year. Very experimental, very different, very out there. Pick it up. It is a Palestinian author, so if you're into the more experimental out there stuff, read this book. Man on High Castle by Philip K. Dick. One word. Mid. American Power and the New Mandarins by Noam Chomsky. It's one of his older books. It's a little bit more complex. I struggled with it, but if you're someone who can read Chomsky without any issues, then you should read this. Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. You know, Ishiguro, again, is kind of like Mohsen Hamid for me, where I've got a love-hate relationship with his writing. This was fine. It wasn't my favorite Ishiguro book, but it wasn't too bad. Amritsar 1919 by Kim A. Wagner. Again, if you're interested in Indian politics or interested in British imperial history, this is a very interesting book for you to pick up to learn more about the effects of the British on India and the Amritsar Massacre. On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This book was not what I was expecting it to be. I didn't go into anything about this. It's a semi-biographical book. It's deep, heart-wrenching, saddening, scary, beautifully written, obviously, as well. So be prepared to be like, oh my god, what's happening? throughout this book. Cobalt Red by Siddharth Kara. I've spoken about this a few times. Absolute must read if you want to learn about what's happening in the Congo right now and the effects that capitalism and our overconsumption has resulted in. The 100 Years War on Palestine by Rashid Khalidi. Absolutely must read book about Palestine. I feel it's a very accessible book on Palestine as well. Absolutely must read. Half of a Yellow Sun by Adichie. Very good book as well. I think it's a really great fiction book and tells you a lot about what happened in Nigeria during the Biafran War. Pep Linders Intensity by Pep Linders. Again, if you're into football, if you want to work in football, if you want to know more about football, pick up this book. If not, don't. She and Her Cat, the book adaptation, Ailse Makoto Shinkai. I thought it was fine. Not the best book I've read. I thought it was fine. The Last Devil to Die by Richard Osman, the 4th book in the Thursday Murder Club series. I take large breaks between reading these books, and although the plots, I think, in my opinion, aren't the most complex plots there are, I think Osman is really great at writing characters you care about. Is really great at writing relationships. So even though it had been about a year since I'd read one of his books, and this is kind of set around Christmas time, so I'm glad I read it like the last 2 weeks of the year. I just, the plot isn't great, but actually the plot is fine. The plot is fine. It's not mind-blowing, it's fine, but the relationships and the characters, his ability to do that is really good, and the way it makes you just feel for these characters is really good. The Goodbye Cat by Hiro Arikawa. I read this on the same day I read She and Her Cat, and I was thinking, why is this a book so much better by She and Her Cat? And then I realised it's written by a woman, and I was like, oh, no wonder it's much better at writing a female character. The Road to Wigan by George Orwell. It's Orwell, innit? This one's kind of cheating. I read the East is East screenplay. It's a good movie, watch the movie. The Black Panther Party, a graphic novel history by David Walker. Look, it is the only graphic novel I've included in here because there's a lot of writing in it. It's really good. It's a very good look into the Black Panthers. You should read this. Fox Tossing, Octopus Wrestling, and Other Forgotten Sports by Edward Brooke Hitching. It's fine. I've just had this on my shelf for many years, so I decided I would read it. If you're kind of interested in the history of sports, you might like this. It was an okay read. To Die for the People by Huey Newton. Good book, very good book. A lot of Huey Newton's speeches are written in there. A lot of his essays are written in there. And it's the first time I managed to find something that had a collection of Huey Newton's works. So I got it online from a very small retailer, so you might be able to find it somewhere. Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I'll be honest, I just find it very difficult to read classical books. I'm not the most smartest dude there is, so I struggle a lot with the language. And obviously I know the story of Pride and Prejudice. I just thought I needed a quick read, so I tried to read this very quickly. Obviously, I can't really give good or bad on this because it's a classic. I'm just not great at reading classics. And the final book I read of the year was Iron Widow by Shiran J. Zhao. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I'll be honest, I was pleasantly surprised by this book. I don't read a lot of YA stuff, I don't read a lot of sci-fi stuff, and I was surprised I enjoyed this book as much as I did. I gave it a 3 on Goodreads. I'd have probably given it a 3.5, maybe 3 3/4. It was a very interesting read. I like the take on it. I like the take on the character being the main character and their relationships. It's a really good departure from the typical stuff you read from YA. Again, this is the first YA book I think I've read since I was like 16. But I like the author as a person, so I decided to pick up their book. Again, I quite enjoyed it. I will probably pick up the second book, which I think came out this year, or well, 2023 this year. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I really like that the setting for a post-apocalyptic book was not rural America / gaudy city in America. I'm really happy that was not the setting. The big reveal at the end, I think I kind of figured out whilst I was reading the book anyway, but also I think it sets up a lot of really intriguing stuff to come in the second book. So I will probably pick up the second book sometime next year. So those are the 52 books I read this year. I was a bit all over the place. I've been invaded by flies in this room. I don't know why. So thank you for joining me on the books I've been talking about this year. I know the last half of the year has been very much more politically motivated with books. However, I'm kind of glad I've taken that turn this year with this channel, and I think I'll kind of be the way this channel goes. I think if I am reading fiction, a lot of my analysis of the books when I talk about them are going to be about fiction stuff. I'm going to be making more books and more videos even about books that are about things that are happening in the world. So obviously I've been made a lot of videos recommending books about and from Palestine. I'm planning on doing the same for other places in the world next year. I think I've said in a comment a few weeks ago I'm going to be doing a video on Sudan sometime next year. I'll do one on Congo. I want to do some books from and about Latin America as well next year. So I think that's kind of more of the angle this channel will go down, which I hope people enjoy. Obviously I will still do, you know, reviews of fiction books, you know, stuff like what's it gone here? I Want to Die but I Want to Eat Tteokbokki. But if books like that arise, which are obviously very popular and I'm interested in reading, I will definitely review them too. But yeah, thank you for joining me on this year's journey. It's been ups and downs personally and globally, but I'm glad this channel has started to find a really nice audience of people who really are engaged with my videos. And I'm glad I'm engaging with you guys. I'm saying engaging a lot. Engage, engage, engage. Not the Nokia phone, the N-Gage. I had one of those. They were great. I'm rambling. Thank you for joining me this year. I hope 2024 is a great year for me, for you, and for the world, hopefully. 2023 wasn't the greatest, in my opinion, but I hope you can join me for the next step of this journey. I hope you have a great day today, and I hope you read a great book today.